Hey guys, what's going on? It is your old pal CHH. Today we're doing top 10 original horror films of the 1990s. But I do want to say I'm giving my own personal list certain caveats. You don't have to do this. I'm excluding two things. Some of you might be upset at me about this, but just hear me out. I'm going to exclude Silence of the Lambs, not because I don't think it's a horror film, but more so because I think it's one of the best films ever, and I'd rather exclude it to avoid the back and forth of, no, it's a psychological thriller. But if you want to put it in your list, do it. I'm just going to take it out, and I'm also excluding Scream. Not because I don't think it would be in my top 10. Of course it would. But I wanted to take out those two movies because they're such big mainstay horror films. I wanted to do a list that could be a little bit more personal and show you guys some of my favorite films besides two of those obvious ones. So with that being said, let's get into my top 10 original 90s horror films. Coming in at number 10, guys, is Tales from the Darkside, the movie from 1990. Love this movie. The cast is fantastic. I love that Steve Buscemi is in this movie. Buscemi, however you say his name. But what a cast. Lot 204 or Lot 245, whatever it's called, with the mummy is great. But the gargoyle sequence at the end is out of this world. I love the story. I love the effects. I love the black cat one. I thought I was going to hate that one the first time I saw it. It ended up being one of the coolest segments ever. You've got Andre Toulon from the first Puppet Master in this. He's also in Christmas Vacation. Hell of an anthology horror film. I think it's the last truly, truly great one besides like Trick or Treat. But in terms of like vintage classic, I think Tales from the Dark Side of the movie is it. Coming in at number 9 is also from 1990, Stephen King's Graveyard Shift. This is a Stephen King movie you don't hear talked about a whole lot, and it's kind of a shame. It's not exactly, it or something, but like, talk about a fun horror fans horror movie. I love it. Being a plant worker that wears a hard hat to work, something about watching other people do it in movies, I just relate to it instantly. But what a movie about these people trying to work in this factory, plant, warehouse where they make wool or cotton, and it's disgusting. There are rats everywhere, but you learn that there are rats everywhere for a reason. Brad Dourif is in this movie, and he has the most bizarre, insanely hysterical role ever as an exterminator. You got to see it to believe it. He steals the show naturally in this movie. Super fun movie. Get the Scream Factory Blu-ray if you haven't seen it. I promise you it's worth a blind buy. Graveyard Shift is in my top 10. Coming in at number 8 is Wes Craven's The People Under the Stairs. I've always loved this movie, and I always will. I think in the 90s, this might be my favorite. I adore People Under the Stairs, and I love anything that came out right around or after Twin Peaks because people from that show were... Everybody wanted to work with those people, so some of the cast members from Twin Peaks is in People Under the Stairs. It's just a good movie. I love the story. I love the house. I love the grittiness of People Under the Stairs, and I love that early 90s vibe. Absolutely adore this movie. People Under the Stairs is just classic 90s. Coming in at number 7, I'm keeping myself to one Charlie Band movie on this list. Coming in at number 7, I went back and forth on which one I was going to put on here, but ultimately I went with Subspecies. This is one of the best vampire films of the decade. I love it. It's not the best, as you're going to see, but I love this movie so much. And the way Charlie Band put it when Ted Nicolai, who directed this film, a super underrated director, he told Ted, we've got to have those little subspecies people in this movie because otherwise it'll just be another vampire film. Because Ted didn't want to have those little minions in the movie, but Charlie pushed for them. And it's a great... Those characters, they're small in the movie, but they're great. No pun intended. They have small parts in it. But Anders Hove as the Radu, the vampire, is amazing. It's part, Salem's Lot look, but it's also part Nosferatu, and hell of a performance. Just one of my favorite characters ever from the Full Moon world. If you haven't seen this movie, please, for me, I'm going to make somebody a Full Moon fan one way or the other. I'm not going to shut up about it. Subspecies is classic 90s, and that's a real movie. Go check it out. Coming in at number 6 is 1997's Wishmaster. Talk about a breath of fresh air. When the Scream boom happened and all these copycat movies were coming out, Wishmaster was the horror fans' horror movie in a sense. Because you got all the legends from the 80s, Kane Hodder, Robert Englund. You've got the K&B guys directing this movie. Wishmaster is the the antidote to the post-Scream era, and I love it for that. And it's actually a really good movie. I love the character of the Wishmaster that has become a franchise, but the first one is, without a doubt, I think the best one. Hell of a movie, and a really cool, simple poster I really like. So Wishmaster is definitely one of my favorites from the decade. Coming in at number 5 is John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness. I don't need to talk too much about this. A lot of people consider this one of John's all-time greatest works, and I totally agree with Sam Neill, and the performance in this is great. You've also got Regine from Julie Carmen, I believe is her name, from Fright Night 2, and she's great in this. It's just a damn good movie. It feels like H.P. Lovecraft, but it's not H.P. Lovecraft. I want to get a prop Sutter Kane book one of these days. If you haven't seen In the Mouth of Madness, go see it. It's one of John's best. It truly is. Coming in at number 4 is 1999's The Blair Witch Project. I can understand some people being like, nah, I'm not going to put that on my list. I get it, but I always go back to the first time I saw this movie. It scared the ever-living crap out of me, and I've always got to give respect to that. I got to give respect to the legacy of the Blair Witch. I know that, there was the movie that came out right before this, The Last Broadcast, that Blair Witch kind of stole the thunder from, and all's fair on that. I'm not going to discredit The Last Broadcast, but if I was going to show people what I thought was a scarier movie, it's The Blair Witch. I think it's still one of the greatest found footage movies of all time. I love it. Coming in at number 3 is The Surprise Sleeper. I think this is one of the best of the decade without a doubt, and I was not a believer the same way the author wasn't. Interview with the Vampire. This is one of the best vampire movies I've ever seen. I thought Tom Cruise was the worst idea for this movie without having seen it. I was like, there's no way this is going to be any good. I watched it and I was blown away with how good he was in this movie. Interview with the Vampire is one of those magical films that sometimes you say to yourself, no, these actors in this film are really big for a reason. They can act. And Interview with the Vampire is damn good, and it's a damn good horror movie. Check it out if you haven't seen it. Interview with the Vampire kicked my ass. It's really that good. Coming in at number 2, Stephen King's 1990 film, Misery. I gotta give it up to Misery. One of those performances that you'll just never forget. Kathy Bates and James Caan together. With James Caan having this, I'm about to be in like a fit of rage any second now, with this passive aggressiveness that works so well, and Kathy Bates being formidable foe, which is why this movie works so well, because with a lesser person in this movie, Misery would not work whatsoever, but Kathy Bates made this movie succeed 1000%. I think anybody that sees this movie would agree. Hell of an actress, and her performance in this is just scary. I mean, man, in terms of Stephen King movies, I forget just how damn good Misery is. I think it's amazing. I love it. And for the 90s, this is a hell of a way to kick off the decade. And coming in at number 1 is 1992's Candyman. I mean, what else do I need to say? I think a lot of people are going to have this in their top 10s, and I'm going to put it at number 1 because I think it's the total package. You've got great performances. Tony Todd is an icon. I mean, this movie made him an icon, and I remember my parents telling me they saw this in the theater because this came out a few months before I was born, and my parents told me that they remember people getting up and running out of the theaters for Candyman, which is crazy because on the surface you just think it's a guy. It's not a character, it's just a man. But Tony has that aura to him that I can see being just absolutely terrifying. So, yeah. Candyman is the total package. Great story, great everything, masterpiece. Tony Todd is just, he's Candyman. So there it is, guys. Those are my top 10 90s original horror films. We're going to do a sequels, of course, after this, but let me know what you would put in. Of course, if you want to put in Silence, go for it. I think that's a masterpiece. If you want to put in Scream, do it. I just didn't do it personally, but I'm not taking away Scream. It's one of the greatest ever for the genre. No denying that. My honorable mention, though, is 7. I got to put over 7. I adore that film, but I wanted to make my list very personal to me. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Drop your list below. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and sub to the channel if you have not. This is good old CHH. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you to all of my Patreon supporters who make videos like this possible. To get behind-the-scenes photos, videos, music, private live streams, and more, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you very much.
Bye.